And good morning, everybody. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Pull up a chair. It's Friday. Congratulations. You did it. So if you're here, this is Food Safety Chat Live. My name is Brian Armentrout with the Food Leadership Group. And every Friday at 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Eastern on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, we do a live stream and talk about food safety. And this is the highlight of the week. And so I'm always really happy when I get cool people on here that I enjoy talking to. And today I am joined by the esteemed Kara Mikkelson. Kara.
I know. I knew
that.
That's right. You caught yourself
halfway out my mouth. And how are you doing today?
I always say it's the hardest 4-letter word you'll ever learn.
Well, it's funny because, there's a person I work with, Anna, and there was another person who had a soft ah, and so everybody always, instead of saying Anna, everybody always wants to say Anna, and it's Anna. So it's weird, isn't it, how the human mind works in that once you kind of set up those pathways, and it's hard to undo them for sure.
Yeah,
but is what it is.
It's no problem.
Ryan, good morning. Somebody else in Wisconsin. Nice to see you, Ryan. How's your weather looking for this weekend, Kara?
A little chilly, I think. It's been chilly. I thought it was April, but I guess it's April in Wisconsin. So
yeah, in Colorado, it's been kind of slow here too. We had some snow earlier this week. It's all gone. It's mid to upper 60s today, on its way to possibly 80 degrees or so early next week. So hopefully that's going to be coming your way.
Yeah. I thought it was supposed to be warm this week, and it was pretty chilly. So we had a cheese con in Madison this week. So
I saw that on LinkedIn. That looked awesome.
It was very fun. It was a great show, lots of great connections, lots of great seminars. So it was a wonderful show.
Yeah, I got to get out to shows and things like that more now. I mean, we've all kind of emerged, and we're getting out to shows and everything now, and we can see each other's faces, and so we're back to normal, I think, and that's good.
Yeah. So that's great.
Hey, Tim's here, and I wasn't sure if Tim was going to make it. He's got a lot of stuff going on. Austin, Maria, nice to see you as well from Minneapolis, and of course, Robert. Always good to have Robert here. So one of the things that I always want to skip over, because I'm always so excited to get into our topic for the day, Kara, is everybody, please join us. Pick up your favorite beverage and join us for a sip. Cheers. I love that mug.
I have my cow mug for CheeseCon.
And I got my wife's periodic table mug.
Oh my gosh, that is fancy.
Isn't that awesome?
You can learn a line each day, right?
Actually, at one point in time when I had them all memorized, right? It was like hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, whatever.
Wow.
And that's all gone.
I work for a chemical company, and I don't even know that. So.
Well, today, I mean, one of the things, and first off, before we get started too much into this as well, Kara, is congratulations to you on your new role.
Thank
Director
you.
of Food Safety with ChemStation. Exciting.
Very exciting.
Good company, very good company. So I'm sure you're having a lot of fun over there.
It's been a wild ride.
and this is a perfect example, right, of things are constantly changing and evolving in what we do. And food safety is one of those things, man, you got to keep up on food safety. And a friend of mine recently said, if you're coasting, it means you're going downhill. And I was like, ooh, I'm keeping that one. I like that. And that has now been, it's been burned into my brain. And one of the things with what we do in quality assurance and food safety is you got to keep ahead of the curve. And so number one is doing things like this and getting news out there of what's going on, and talking and meeting with your fellow food safety aficionados and understanding what's going on out there. And as we've talked about on this chat many, many times, Kara, is the food safety is not a point of competition. If one company has a recall, in the eyes of the consumer, we're all guilty, and we need to make sure that we're working together. Oh, cool. Harabi, H-R-A-B-I, good morning, or good evening in Tunisia. Wow, Tunisia, that's really cool.
That's
I'd love
amazing.
to go there. I would love to go visit there. That's really cool. I think a lot of the Star Wars movies were filmed in Tunisia. If I remember.
Were they? Oh, nice.
You can go and visit the old sets. I think they're still there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is crazy. My wife has often said I'm a collection of useless information. So
No, you know what? Information is never useless, right? There's always a use for it.
That's a good point. And so kind of what we wanted to do here today is have some fun on this Friday and kind of go through some of the things that I do to keep up on food safety and make some comments. And part of this is definitely today, we want this to be highly interactive. So if you have different sources out there of different things that you're using for tracking food safety, there's a plethora of different things you can do out there. And part of this, Kara, is figuring out what works best for you. And one of the things that I've done through my career is track and distribute information. I don't keep it to myself. And this really came about early in my career. So I was a young food safety director running quality at a company, and we had an audit. And the auditor was retired from Kraft. And this gentleman pretty much wrote the book for food safety at Kraft. And he showed me his food safety book, and I've still got it. And his picture's in the back, and I'm like, ooh, that's really cool. And during the audit, he asked me a really important question that stuck with me. He said, okay, Brian, your HACCP plan and everything looks great, but I do have a question. How are you keeping your team and your plants up to date on all the different things that are happening in food safety? And I was like, oh, yeah, right. I hadn't thought about it. And it hit me like a lightning bolt. And so ever since, from that point on, I've been keeping a really, really close eye. And what I've found as well, good morning, Claire. What I've found as well is that my goal and my objective on this is to know more about what's going on in food safety than anybody else out there. Now, is that true? Probably not. But that's an objective. Right? It's an objective we should all strive for. Right. So when an auditor or a customer or whatever would come to my company, and I would be, talking food safety and the different things we're doing and things like that, it helps to build your credibility. And we're always talking about continuous improvement. We're talking about preventive actions, making sure we're doing things ahead of the failure. And that's the more important. Corrective action is, damage is done. Okay, let's try and dig ourselves out and not do that again. Preventive, much better. And it's kind of the flaw in what we do as well too. And this is something, Kara, I always used to train my quality managers on to kind of help set them up for the understanding around this, which is if we're doing our jobs correctly, everything runs smoothly and nobody notices, right? Exactly. So as we were talking before we went live here, that gets into a whole nother conversation around things that we've talked about here in the chat as well, is making sure that your visibility in the organization and your promotion of what we talk about here is taking place, because that only helps. It improves food safety, it improves your effectiveness in the company, all of these things. This all, right? It all comes together. And don't be a one-trick pony, and make sure you understand these things. So one of the things, and if you're familiar with this channel, one of the things that I promote and help people out with, and this is free, it doesn't cost anything. I put together a locals group, and we'll go through this here today. And we'll go through and do a live action here on what our thoughts are around some particular issues. And as we're going through these, guys, put your comments in here too, and tell us if you're familiar with these issues, if there's other things that you're tracking out there and what you're doing in these areas. Because as we've been seeing here within, the last 2-3 months, man, there's been a lot of activity.
Hard to keep up.
Frank Giannis leaves FDA, the head of StifSan resigns. Testimony, FDA is getting lots of criticism in the infant formula world. FDA pushes back and says, well, the infant companies need to do more. Bad answer. Bad answer. That's, at the very least, it's not good optics. And so part of what we want to do here today is dive into that and look at the locals piece. So that's my long-winded introduction. Anything, anything to add to that, or?
No, I think that's great. And, like you say, just keep it on. It's hard, right, to keep on top of things. Super simple things you can do, though, are just subscribe to recalls, just like what we were talking about. Subscribe to the FDA, USDA, CFIA. You get the emails, and at least then that keeps you informed. It keeps you up to date what's going on in industry. And I know we'll go into that a little bit more later on. So.
Yeah, one of my favorite is Food Safety News that Bill Marler put together. And money out of his own pocket, right? Doing these type of things. And the information I get out of there is amazing. And you'll see that.
Invaluable. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is absolutely, it's a great resource. And just,
yeah. And you'll see that as we kind of go through the list here, a lot of these say food safety news. And so part of this is when I post these within locals as well, Kara, it has the option here. I always do this to push that out to the people who are subscribed. So you don't have to remember necessarily to go to the locals group and go through information. I will send it to you. So there's two different ways to get your information, and repetition is always a good way to look at things. So without further ado, let's dive in. Let's look at some stuff here. So let me get this on the right screen. We were talking about Scott Adams and some of the things he's doing. And so that was on the wrong screen. So there we go. So boom, cool. So this is my locals page. And these are the different things that I subscribe to within locals. And in particular, we're going to go through mine. So within here, there's a link to my book I wrote a few years ago. So if you're interested in my book, it's on Amazon. And so with this, right, so this goes backwards through time, and we're just going to dive into these things. So anything that's in here, Kara, you can then go and click on these different links. And if I've got this set up correctly, we should be able to then go to the next window. Now, with this, I'm on the page, Kara, that has this information. I'm not looking at the live stream with comments. So if you can keep track of the comments and fire those off as we're talking.
I sure can. So
Definitely.
So far, everybody's just saying good morning.
So we'll do this as kind of an example here, right? So we've got Bill Marler here, of course, and the esteemed Sean Stevens, both prior guests on the show. So let's see, that should have switched over to the wide view here of Sean and Bill. Can you see that okay, Kara?
Yep, I think so. Okay. There's still the comments on the side. So.
Okay, perfect. So here within this article, and a lot of these are quick reads. And so, of course, Jack in the Box, we talked about this. And recently we had Dr. Darren Detweiler on with the 30th anniversary of the Jack in the Box incident. And Riley, of course, his young son was lost during that issue. And so Darren's done a great job, being an advocate for food safety and making sure that the legacy for his son remains. So these type of things really resonate, because part of this, and I loved in this article too, as I went through here, they're talking about the 3 C's: compassion, commitment, and communication, which is what we're talking about here as well. So this information that we're talking about, I think this is an important thing to remember here, Kara, is that this is emotional, this is personal, these are people. We need to always remember that. And any type of a food safety incident where people become sick or worse, that's a person's story, and that is impacting their lives. And we need to make sure that we remember that and bring that compassion to what we're doing as we're teaching and engaging in our companies and within our industry.
Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that.
Yeah.
We don't realize the impact that these illnesses have. I know, and I think I've told you this story in the past, but my son was born, and he's 23 now, but he was born 3 months premature and was in the NICU, and they never really confirmed it because it was 23 years ago. So it was a little different time. But there was actually a Coronabacter outbreak. And one little girl lost a portion of her intestines. Ooh. And that always stuck with me. It was like, ooh, okay, this is, because until you experience it, you don't really think about the impact, I guess, a lot of times.
Exactly. And yeah, one of the things that I would always tell my training groups and things like this is I would be in a production facility and say, okay, you guys are making these things, great. If you can't take a product off of your line and take it home and feed it to your grandchildren without giving a second thought, I need to know about that, because it needs to be absolutely safe all the time. And sometimes we think about these things too abstractly. We need to be able to tie those back, which is, I think, really important. And Bill and Sean both do a great job of communicating that message.
Absolutely.
So warning letters. So if you're in locals, one of the things I do every single week is I will scan through the warning letters and look for things that interest me. And I've done whole shows on this as well, relative to what it is that FDA is saying out here. And within this, there was two things here. And what I wanted to point out in here is there's a common theme between these two warning letters that were issued to these companies. And this is what's kind of nice about the food safety newsletter is they're summarizing this information here from the warning letter. So it kind of helps you digest it a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
So, and part of this too, right, is look at the delay. And this is back from October. And the warning letter didn't go out until February. And it's a lot of time.
There's a lot of days between October and February.
Yeah. And so what happened in between? But they were able to then link this fresh raw salmon back to this outbreak of this strain of salmonella. And part of what we see FDA doing more and more of is linking this back. And this is something, Kara, that companies are thinking more and more about. And we saw this in a warning letter that went to Jeff recently, where FDA strongly advised that J.M. Smucker should start doing whole genome sequencing on the different strains that they're finding that are resident and tracking that information. So part of this is you need to think about that as a company. Is that something you should be doing? Huge change in how companies are approaching this. Now, again, and with these products here, right? So there was the investigation piece of it, how they found this in interviewing people. And a lot of these things take time. And they were able to track this back. FDA went to the facility, found, look at this, 18 swabs positive for 1, 2, 3 different strains, different species of salmonella. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this plant. Look at all these isolates. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I don't think we can see it if you're looking at the thing here.
Okay. Let me see here. I think probably share this tab instead. Aha.
Bingo.
Hey, okay. Technical difficulty. Sorry. So yeah, I'm scanning through this and pulling up this information, and I'm going through here and looking for these highlights of what are these things that these people are finding, and what did the investigation say? And as I was just talking about here, look at all these different. This facility's got a big problem. So again, this is a fresh fish facility, wet environment that's going to affect your strategy. So one of the main decisions, and this is one of the things that you look at, Kara, as well, and what you're looking at from a sanitation side is the number one question always is this a wet environment or a dry environment? Because that's going to impact how you clean substantially.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And again, here, check this out. So the FDA advised the importance of whole genome sequencing via conference calls. So FDA is starting to hit this hard. You need to know that. You need to be able to think like FDA as much as you can and figuring these things out.
Yeah. And understand and then have a plan, right? Understand what's your strategy.
Right.
Don't just start doing stuff, right? You don't want to just have no guidance at all in your decision making. So,
exactly.
And if you aren't educated, get the education. Right.
Yeah. And so part of this always, and we see this, in webinars that we give and things like this, when we get questions back from the people who are participating, is I need specific advice on how to do things in my plant. And I would love to answer, but I can't, right? Because every plant is unique and you need to approach it that way. You need to be able to go in there and look at it and evaluate the equipment and the floor and the plants and the flow and all of these type of things to figure out the right way to attack these things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Tim had made a comment, risk assessment should guide your plan. And I was just in a session about this, and yeah, exactly, because nothing, it's not going to be the same from facility to facility or even room to room in a facility. So you have to understand and do that risk assessment and use that as your guidance.
Exactly. And so here's the next warning letter. So generally on these notices that I post, FDA will have 2 examples. And so I'll scan through these exactly what we're doing here right now. And what's key here in this paragraph is ready to eat. So, and you can see my highlight on this, Kara?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So ready to eat. So what FDA is saying here in this is, as we know within FSMA, ready to eat means you are required to have an environmental monitoring program. And I've seen 483s and warning letters like this where companies didn't know that and they weren't even doing environmental monitoring. So are you ready to eat? And here we have El Mono and insects, right? So that's not good.
No.
So FDA,
not usually.
no, and so they went through here. 19 swabs. FDA found 19 swabs in this facility that were positive for El Mono. Yee.
Wow, that's
a lot.
Not a good record.
Of the positive findings, one swab was collected from a food contact surface of a prep table located at this location. Excuse me. And again, we've talked about this on the chat before as well, are you sampling food contact surfaces? Because guess what? FDA is. So if you ignore the surface and you're not finding out what's going on there, you need to take a look at that. So look at the other things they're sampling. Milk crates that were holding raw tomatoes and onions. What do you think the chances are, Kara, that these black milk crates that are toting these raw tomatoes and onions around are being cleaned?
Yeah, I would say I'm not even going to give it 50-50.
Yeah. So,
and I'm not really a betting woman, but
yeah, these are the type of things, these secondary pieces of equipment or things that are used to transport ingredients or materials or things around, they get overlooked. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we've got this pallet jack that runs all over the plant. Oh, we've got these hand tools. So we've got, spoons and
a lot of times it's not an intentional act, right? It's not intentional. It's just like you say, overlooked, or even traffic patterns of people, going through the facility, just understanding the traffic patterns too. Where are people going? Are people going from that raw area to the ready to eat, or the loading dock to the line kind of thing? So just understanding that, again, we head back to that risk assessment, right?
Exactly. And the bad news continues for this company. This was not the first time that they found El Mono. FDA has found this in 2020, 2018, 2017. And look at this piece here too. This is very interesting. FDA, because this facility is dealing with both FDA and USDA regulated materials, USDA was in there and did sampling. And look at this. USDA let FDA know, hey, heads up, guys, we found positives in this environment. Wow. It just continues on, right? Strange. And my goodness, look at all of this. Scary, right?
That's
and now
yeah.
And now we're just getting to the GMPs and their failures in GMPs. So in the pest area, they didn't control their packaging. Oh, there's a cockroach. Yuck. Right. So now, So
somebody brought up a point about nest crates and food grade bins. Everybody focuses on the inside, right? Oh, the inside. What about the outside?
That's a really good point.
I love that. Great point. Especially if you're nesting those. Oh boy.
So you have this thing sitting on the ground, rolling around, and then at the end of the day, you stack that dirty bottom inside the food contact. Or
during the day, and then you go to fill them back up again. So
right, and that's just two different warning letters, right? So I'm back on the summary now here. So we'll kind of go down here and look at this. And so a lot of the times I'll put little colorful comments in here on what I'm thinking as well. So let's switch over to this guy. So can you see the article now?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, what did I do wrong? So you're still seeing the summary. So
nope, I'm still seeing us.
Okay, let me switch back here and see what I'm doing. Oh, it went away. Isn't that interesting? Okay. Present. Share my screen. Entire screen. Pardon the infinite thing for a second. Wow.
Boom. All right.
There we go. All right. Hopefully. All right. So
I see CDC say flour.
Yes. Again, flour. Oh my goodness.
They forgot the again.
It's these are really dangerous things that go into all kinds of other things. Right? Nobody sits down to eat a plate of flour. Flour goes into all kinds of different things. It's an ingredient, and this is why in your food safety plan and your preventive controls, supplier management is so important. Mm-hmm. And so I switched over to the actual story here. Okay, good deal. I figuring this out now. And FDA is saying here, flowers is a source, but the brands aren't known yet. So they're still tracking this, but we're into 11 states now. 3 people have been hospitalized. And again, another, different genus and species. So FDA knows what they're looking for, which means they've sent this out, they've done the whole genome sequencing, and they're tracking this stuff down. One of the things that FDA does, and we saw this with Blue Belt, is when they have a potential issue and they've zeroed in on a plant, they will take samples and then they'll go back to their database with millions of samples and compare and cross-reference to see if any other past illnesses were associated with what they're investigating now.
Right. Yep. Yeah. That's the tool, right? That's the way that the tool is used. So.
And so what's interesting is comparing this to the warning letters and that mechanism that can take some time. FDA is acting pretty quickly. So they just, March 29th, not too long ago.
No, that isn't.
We got a problem. And so they're letting the public know that there's something out there going on that we need to be aware of. And what's interesting with salmonella in dry products is we found this out from peanut butter as well, is that low water activity products may slow down salmonella. It may make it dormant. It may be hanging around, but it's not going to die. And it's just waiting for the right time to attack. So just because you have a dry product doesn't mean you're safe.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, exactly. Still have to do your due diligence. Absolutely.
And now this is interesting as well, Cars. Look at this. So the 12 people that have been sick, this is nationally distributed. This outbreak is everywhere, all across the country.
Wow.
And technically, the definition of an outbreak is only 2 people.
Right.
So we think an outbreak is this giant thing with, CDC and their little hazmat outfits running around the country, flying on jets, racing against the clock, is like they do in movies. No, that's not the case.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I believe they had issued a statement just saying don't eat raw cookie dough or raw cake batter. Again, I know it's been in the past, but especially with this particular outbreak. So
exactly. So Nestle, right? And so here's one of my snarky comments here, right? So we often hear, oh, geez, these food safety programs are so expensive and things like this. Nestle had to close down an entire factory.
Yeah.
All those people have lost their jobs. People became sick. Terrible, right? These are the type of things.
Yeah. And I know I always do in passive training, I always say, what's the cost of a recall? And yes, it can be minimal sometimes, but a lot like this example, obviously it's devastating. And I'm sure it's devastating to that community. It's devastating to the people that got ill. So it's far reaching, much further reaching than people anticipate. And again, and I always say this too, it's like, okay, so they closed the facility, but it's also brand damage. And that can't necessarily be quantified a lot of times. But I know that in previous recalls, companies have said, it takes a year, 2 years, 3 years to get our brand reputation back to where it was prior to the recall.
And if you follow food safety like I do, that raw cookie dough thing that you referenced was a Nestle facility.
Right. Yeah. So and I always use the example. My mom's 82, and like she 10 years ago bought some sour cream, opened it, and it was moldy. And that happens, right? You get a leaky package or something like that. She has not bought that sour cream since then. Yeah. Because she's like, I don't trust that brand anymore. And, she's just one little lady, but she does have a book club and she tells all them, and it can be a big deal. So with the brand.
I mean, what's that rule of thumb is that for every person that goes through the trouble of complaining, at least 10 times that amount don't. But to your point, they tell everybody, right?
Yep, exactly. So,
and how do you fight that, right? And again, it gets back to our point earlier as well. It's not necessarily even that brand. It's in your
the commodity. Yeah.
It's like, ooh, sour cream, moldy, right? And so that visceral connection has been made. And that's How do you break them?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's not just that cost. It's not like you say. I feel like salaries and program put together for food safety is a lot cheaper than those repercussions. So.
Yep, totally agree. So with this issue here, and this is what caught my attention here. So we had 56 illnesses. The median age was 6 years old.
Median. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Right.
That's
So median versus instead of the average, right? The median is that midpoint. So there were at least half of that group younger than 6.
wow.
So a lot of this too, right? And so you've got the hemorrhagic version here, right? Extremely dangerous for children.
Exactly.
And this is Jack in the Box type of thing. So part of this, you look at this and you say, well, goodness, how in the world pizzas are cooked, right? You call it, how did it survive? This is probably a pretty big infestation then relative to, the amount of actual bacteria that are present. And so was this introduced through the crust? Was it introduced through the sauce? These type of things. How did this grow?
Right.
Terrible.
Yeah. That is horrible. And obviously, anytime anyone gets ill, it's horrible. But it strikes even deeper when it's young children. So.
Yeah, and so 120 employees lost their jobs, and Nestle said it had faced a sharp decline in pizza order forecast to the evolving market.
Yeah,
I wonder why that market evolved.
Right. Yeah. And Moraine just commented, I'm not sure a company whose product hurt people ever really fully regain their brand reputation.
No. And when you're Nestle, right, the largest food company in the world, the impact is worldwide.
Yeah. And Tim commented about social media impact and that, yes, there's again, when I was growing up, it was, kind of like my mom's book club, right? It was word of mouth, but now you have that impact of the social media that it can drive those comments and decision-making of the buyers pretty easily. So that's an interesting comment.
And so to your point, then we have advocacy groups out there, CSPI, Consumer Reports, different groups that are out there tracking and looking at food safety as well. And they're out there reporting on these issues. So Consumer Reports, right?
Yep.
10 riskiest foods. I had commented here enoki mushrooms because my goodness, have there been a lot of recalls.
I feel like every time you send out an update, it's the enoki mushrooms.
Yeah, I don't, and that's part of what happens in the mind of the consumer because we're all consumers. And will I ever buy enoki mushrooms? No, I don't care if you had a good audit. I don't care if your company's okay. I don't care if you're GFSI certified. I'm never going to eat enoki mushrooms because now in my mind, there's something wrong in that process that is allowing Listeria to proliferate.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what caught my eye here relative to this list, right? So here's Consumer Reports. And I think Bill Marler's done this too, right? He has his list of foods that he won't eat. And so deli cheese and meats. And this is something too that's very interesting relative to this is that how is your local grocery store doing at making sure that their deli is clean? And when they're slicing up your meat, how are they cleaning those slicers between the different customers? Are they? Right? Maybe not, right? They don't have time to do that. And there have been a lot of work out there relative to delis in retail locations and links to food illnesses there.
Right.
So it may not even be your product. It may be the handling of your product after it's at a retail location.
Right.
And look at this list, Kara. It's like leafy greens, ground beef, onion, right? Papaya. This list is looking kind of familiar, right? Oh, there's flour.
It sure does.
These things cross-pollinate. And what are the things that FDA is looking at with their new enhanced traceability rules? High-risk items. So you need to understand what these are.
Right. Exactly. For sure. And just have that education piece right? And making sure that your education. Yeah, and I don't know if you can read the comments. There's lots of comments coming in here.
Oh, good. Yeah, let's go through some comments. I'm going to switch back to the comments. No, I'm not. Okay.
I was trying to keep up.
Fire those comments at me. What do we got?
Marina just said, I'm not sure. We said that one. There was somebody said, I thought it was Marina again. So, although a large parent company like Nestle have the benefit of other products that fall under other brands, so people don't make that connection. Right. Smaller companies don't have that same benefit that they have that kind of dilution factor, I guess you could say. Sebastian said, Nokia and Listeria love story. Could be a good book. Maybe that's your next book, Brian. That could be your next book.
There we go.
You're the Nokia mushroom dude.
There we go. Oh, this is something that I've tracked a long time. Bluebell, right? The Bluebell ice cream recall. Finally, closure relative to this. So the CEO, Paul Cruz, has been in court personally, right? And again, this ties back to other topics that we've done here on the chat. The park doctrine. If a company CEO has an issue and this company doesn't resolve it, guess what? They are personally liable.
Yeah.
And that's what these court cases have been about. And he is paying $100,000 fine. Now, how much did all of these lawyers cost him?
Oh,
and he's been retired for a while now. He's not going to jail, but he's paying a lot of money. Wasn't enough. I don't know. Yeah. But part of this
is it enough of a deterrent, right?
Yeah. So part of this is, are you educating your senior leadership in your company? Are you telling them about cases like this and sitting down with your CEO and telling her, hey, listen, if this happens, you can't say, oh, I gave that to operations and they didn't fix it. That's not my problem. It is. It is your problem. Right. And you are personally liable for that. So if FDA decides to prosecute the DOJ and do like they did with Mr. Cruz here, you got to be prepared for that. And so you need to make sure that you're managing up and you're teaching in your company that these things matter. Because a lot of times too, Kara, is where do the CEOs and companies come from?
Right.
They come from marketing, they come from sales, they may come from finance. How often does the head of quality become the CEO of a company? Pretty rare where that happens.
I mean, stretch goals, right? But but yeah, absolutely. And so education, once again, is just really important. And Austin said, something is fishy about that case being wrapped up. It felt like it drug on for quite some time. And
this has been going on for years, right? So look at it, 2015, right? 8 years.
Yes, that's a long time.
Right. So keeping this information out there. And so educating, right? That's what we're doing here today as well.
Right.
So again, Stuart Parnell, everybody knows that name, right? Peanut Corporation of America. This was the CEO who put contaminated peanut butter, industrial peanut butter in a lot of applications, again, which went into other products and caused this giant recall. People died. People went to jail over this. He went to jail. His brother went to jail. The head of quality went to jail over this gigantic case here. And he's been trying to get out of his sentence and petitioning for early release and all these type of things. Like I said, no.
Right.
What he did was awful, and he needs to pay the price.
Horrible, right? Yep. There's definitely, very little sympathy there.
Yeah, and you don't have to have small children to know the impact of the infant formula crisis and what's been going on in this market. And you need to dig into this, because behind the scenes, right, is and this is what's very important. And I think a lot of times within what we do, we don't pay enough attention to the political side of these things,
right? And
figuring out, because this has a massive implication on us as food safety professionals. Why did FSMA even happen? Well, it's because there were some very severe issues that kind of all happened at the same time, the melamine and other issues that happened in the marketplace. People got really, really angry. Trust in the food supply went way down. Congress felt a ton of pressure. And very, very quickly, the Food Safety Modernization Act was drafted and passed, and President Obama signed it like that. Right? It happened from a regulatory
Right.
process standpoint, this all went very, very quickly. And that's a step change. And these step changes happen quickly, right? We think of things going like this, and that's not true.
No.
Things go up in chunks, and this was a big chunk. So part of what you need to understand when looking at this, it'll make infant formula. No, it doesn't matter.
That
They're
is
looking-
so wrong. You should
Yeah.
not think that way. And I know I told you when all of this kind of came about and was just first hitting the news, I was telling people this is going to be big. This is going to be a game changer for our industries, our food, the food industry, but also FDA. I just had a feeling it was going to be a big shakeup, and you don't have to be producing infant formula or ingredients for infant formula to feel the effects.
Exactly, because one of the things I would always teach my quality managers is FDA is a government agency, which means it's political. And the politics drive activity. So yes, they like to talk about their scientific focus and these type of things, but when FDA is getting public criticism, high levels of scrutiny being thrown in front of congressional committees, things move.
Yeah.
So Bill Marler, and I agree with Bill, get the F out of FDA. So he is saying that how the organization and how FDA is currently structured does not work because they're focused on the medical device side of things. They're focused on the drug side of things. That's where the lion's share of their funding goes. And food is left holding whatever's left over. He's saying this needs to be separated out so the prioritization and the focus of resources can be properly managed. And he didn't feel that way. And he's looked at this now and said, I've changed my opinion. We need to do this. And I agree.
Yeah. And it's very interesting to hear his take and his assessment on it. So
and again, here's another political thing, right? So CFSTAN, the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, the director, the head of that retired. So where is she going to go? Who's going to take that over? Right. What is their approach going to be? CFSTAN has a giant impact on how things are done relative to what FDA is doing in the field. One of the things that I've talked about in the past relative to the investigation operations manual for FDA is when they're going in and doing environmental sampling, CFSTAN is helping to direct that, which means they're helping to give FDA information relative to particular industries. So if you're a dairy operation or a whatever, CFSTAN is saying, okay, you should be sampling here, 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 and here, focus on these areas and do these type of things. So they're getting smarter and smarter about how they do this every day.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Have you, and this is some food for thought for everybody on the chat today, have you thought about changing your sampling program? And if you do, what would that look like? How can you mirror relative to these? Who do you need to talk about in your company to make those changes happen? And importantly, should you look at these? So you see how all of these different stories, and this is just the sequential order of how all of these have gone. You can see within the sequence of these different stories how they're all linked together. FDA doing environmental sampling, FDA finding positives, FDA doing whole genome sequencing, FDA issuing warning letters.
I was just going to say warning letters then. It's the progression, right? So.
You need to, and this is something that's really important, I think, Kara, for professional, technical people like us. Sometimes you need to get out of the weeds and you need to step back and you need to look at these things at that 30,000 foot level, as I talk about, and say, what does this mean for the industry? What does this mean for what it is that we do within our facilities and our company? What are other companies doing in these areas? You need to think about these things, and that makes you a thought leader, and that gives you more value in your company.
Right. And I think, and again, I believe we'll get to, sometimes we become very siloed and we think about our commodities only, our programs only, but there's a lot of opportunity to learn, and maybe, just looking at a different program or a different commodity, understanding. And that's why I subscribe to all the recall information, just like we had been talking about, because just because it's a recall in lettuce doesn't mean that I can't learn from it. that I can't understand it, and I can't have, a better understanding of the my programs and have that affect my programs.
Oh, 100%. And that is such a great observation. Look at all of the work the meat industry has done on the control of organisms in their production environment.
Right.
Does that learn from that?
Yeah, I started it. I mean, I essentially started in the 90s with Oscar Mayer, when all of this was just kind of coming about ish, I guess. It hadn't been there, but it was really gaining momentum with the mega reg, and the learnings that I got there, I can apply all over, and it doesn't have to be commodity specific. And Claire said, food safety shouldn't be a trade secret. I am the biggest. I love that. We put together webinars and things like that. I want everybody to join them, right? I'm not going to exclude people because they're my competitor or, not a customer. It needs to be an educational, spread the word, right? And make sure that everybody has that opportunity.
Here's an example from produce that I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. I wonder if we can apply this to other industries. I was talking to an executive in the produce industry. And so, of course, spinach and romaine lettuce and these type of things have really taken a lot of hits. And one of the things he was telling me about is a new program they had put in place for harvesting in their fields. They would do GPS tracking of the workers and where they were picking product. So they knew within the different segments and different sections within their harvesting processes where that material came from, and then they could trace it. So if something happened, they could then zone in. So instead of looking at 20 acres, now they're looking at a small section of that to see what happened. So that was a gigantic tool to help them with their investigations going forward.
That's a huge tool. I mean, and you think about that, that option wasn't there 5 years ago, 10 years ago at all. So what an awesome tool, though. What a great tool.
Yeah. And so often in other industries, in a factory setting, we talk about, spaghetti diagrams and tracking where people move, because we all know for listeria and these type of things that we're talking about today, it gets there somehow. How did it get there? Was it on somebody's shoes? Was it on a pallet jack? Is it through the your HVAC system in your facility? Condensate on air conditioning coils, right? Huge problem with those. Can that technology be applied to other locations?
Exactly. Man. Yep. How do we figure it out? And Maureen, actually, we were talking about these tools and things, and she had a comment that she attended a salmonella symposium, and of course, sampling was a big topic. I find it strange that companies may suffer negative impacts from finding positive swabs. How do you balance the need for monitor and the risk of having that data documented in relation to future recalls and outbreaks? And we were talking about this prior to launching the webinar.
So
and that's a great comment.
I've been doing a whole lot of talking here, Kara. So I'll let you kind of take the lead on that, and then I'll follow up with comments on my side too. What do you think?
Well, and we were talking about this, the mentality is supposed to be seek and destroy, right? And that now, and just what you were talking about, people are getting warning letters for finding salmonella in the environment. That can be discouraging. It could potentially be discouraging. But in my opinion, I don't think you shouldn't hold back, right? Because you want to find that. You are trying to find that, and you need to have that seek and destroy. And it's a risk. And I guess I kind of open it up to those of you that are in the trenches every day, trying to wade through all this information and really understand how to, keep that documentation. But again, you have to understand, you want to know where those organisms are in the environment, and you will find them. Will find them. And exactly, Justin just said, proactive, not reactive. If you're reacting, it's too late. And so I think it's better to have that documentation, and better to have those investigations, and better to have that data so that you can, but then what you have to do is do something with it. Right? do something with it, do those corrective actions, do that proactive investigation. But if you gather that data and you're just sitting on it, that's when you're going to get in trouble.
Right. So Pandora's box is open.
Right.
You can't use ignorance as a defense. And so saying, well, I'm just not going to test, and so I don't know. What? That's worse. That's worse.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're just waiting, right? You're just waiting for the sword of Damocles to fall on your head and kill you. And that's we all want to be able to sleep at night and protect the public and do these things. I think a big chunk of this, right, is one of the phrases I use around this too, Kara, is you have to be able to tell your story. And going out and aggressively seeking and destroying. And so your phrase there is perfect, because it's seek and destroy, right? Not seek and ignore, right?
Right. Or not seek and maybe I'll do something.
Yeah.
That's not as catchy.
Yeah, you need to be able to go back and use plan, do, check, act. I always come back to that.
Yeah.
When you find something, you need to take action relative to those things and putting together a defense. So let's say that you have some samples in your environment that are positive, and you do your vector analysis and you're working really hard to eradicate it, and it's still somewhere else. And no, you don't stop. And part of that, as we go through these warning letters, right, and this is where you need to start integrating this information, is we're heading down the path to a warning letter if this continues. Yes. So maybe, right, and this is completely based upon the context of your company, maybe we need to start doing finished product testing.
Right.
Maybe we need a product, maybe we need a hold and release, because part of what you need to do, and this is all completely theoretical, me talking off the top of my head, is maybe put yourself in FDA's shoes, and FDA is going to come in and see positives and say, how do you know that your product is safe? How do you know?
Right.
And how do you answer that question?
Yeah.
And a big piece of this is having food safety counsel. So people like Sean Stevens and other food industry lawyers who understand food law and can help you work through these things as an advocate for your company, who are outside of the day-to-day, that can think about these things with you and for you to help you put together a good plan of attack. You have to address it. It's not going away.
No. 100%.
And again, this is why the technical and the communication and persuasion skills need to be developed, because you have to be able to explain this to people who are not technical in your company. Of why these things are there, why we're having trouble getting rid of them, what biofilms are. And we've talked about those on this channel before as well. Bringing in experts, because a lot of times having that extra set of eyes, using your sanitation company. Oh my goodness, the amount of expertise at ChemStation to help with these type of things, right? Huge.
Right. A lot of expertise. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And truly, and I guess this, again, this kind of plays into it, but truly getting to the root cause. Yeah. Sometimes we like to put a little Band-Aid over the root cause, and truly getting down, digging in, and ensuring that you are actually getting to the root cause. And again, I'm in a chemical company, so reclean. We're going to reclean, but if it recleans and it comes back, you didn't do the appropriate root cause analysis. You didn't really find the source. Maybe the source is a leaky roof. You're not looking up, or it's some kind of equipment that has to be completely disassembled, and you're just not doing that extra step. So you got to make sure that you're getting to that root cause analysis.
Exactly. And so over the course of this hour here, Kara, we just went through a few examples. Right. Just a few examples. And that continues. And I post in the locals group probably twice a week. And so selfishly, I'm doing this for myself. This is how I keep up to date on what's going on out there.
You do a great job, and you keep me up to date, so I appreciate it.
And yeah, that lesson that was taught to me, right? It's in my ear all the time, and it's never gone away.
Right.
And subscribing to, right? So I don't think I put up the information here on the locals group, because it always gets kicked out for some reason. I don't think that the because a lot of times, right, these platforms that we use don't want you leaving and going to a new location, and so they'll
Oh, sure.
modify it and not let you do it. But I'm going to give it a shot here. We'll see if it works. So all you have to do is go, even if this link doesn't work, all you have to do is go to locals.com and look for the Food Leadership Group, and there I am. And there's all kinds of other different providers on Locals as well. So kind of as you saw on the side on my feed, there's political commentators and Scott Adams. We were talking about Scott Adams before. And if you're not familiar with Scott Adams, well, you probably know him from the Dilbert cartoons, but he's amazing from the standpoint of what he shares around analyzing politics and persuasion techniques and communication skills. And he looks at it from a neutral standpoint. And one of the key points, and he's got some amazing books, by the way, too, that you can buy on Amazon. But we have information bubbles that we live in. And there's conservative bubbles and liberal bubbles and food safety bubbles and all of these type of things. You need to understand that perspective, because sometimes you're not seeing the whole story. So the more, right, I think that's kind of our theme for today's show, is the more you can widen your perspective, the more rounded you are, and the more you can look at things from unique perspectives and get that take that a lot of times you don't necessarily see the first time around.
Right, exactly. And that's why we're saying, okay, a lot of times if I live in produce, I just think about produce. Oh, produce, produce. There's a lot of information out there on ready-to-eat meat, on cheese, on all these different all of the different commodities. Don't just live in your little world. There's more. There's lots more information out there beyond.
And look at the innovations that are going on right now in food. Right, all kinds of new stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Meat analogs and, seafood being grown from cell cultures and all of these different type of things that are being grappled with and looked at from a food safety standpoint. So as you put these new things together, what are the new risks associated with these? How do you identify those? There have been things out there that weren't really looked at too closely in the past. Bacillus cereus. It's like, okay, somebody ate some potato salad that was a little too old at the church social, and they got sick. Okay, how does that now impact the new industries? And so there's been a lot of work out there relative to this. You need to know about those things if your company is dabbling in these spaces.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting. That's what I always preach, is just that you don't just live in your little world, just like the infant formula. It's like, I had so many people who are like, we don't have to worry about that. We don't make it. You have to worry about it. Look at, it just leads to all of the activity that now is going on in the FDA that will affect you. So
and so part of this too, right, is your sampling programs, because chemistry and micro are very different. Microbiology is random. Right. So you have a biofilm that all of a sudden sloughs off in the middle of your production, and you've got a chunk going through your process. And if you don't have a robust sampling program, you may miss it. Exactly. And it's there. A lot of times organisms don't like to grow. So
right. Understanding your methodologies and things like that too is always important. Working with your contract laboratories that you hire, using those resources. Exactly. I'm always a big one with resources. I love to give, find new resources and then share. I think that's important. Just like Claire had said, it's not a trade secret. It's not a trade secret.
100%. So we're out of time. My goodness.
I know. Oh my gosh, that went like, whew.
Right. And that was just a little taste of what's out there, right? So widen your perspectives. Use experts like Kara. Use experts like me out there to help. And so we had Dr. Marshall from Eurofins on recently, and poor guy, he was up. So the prior night for that chat last week, he was up till 2:30 in the morning helping a plant try and work on an issue, and then he jumped on the chat in the morning. Yeah. Dedication, right?
I was just going to say that's a dedicated food safety professional.
Yeah, and he's the best. I mean, Doug is an awesome guy. But Any closing comments, Kara? I'll give you the last word because I've been.
No, no worries. No, I just appreciate this, Brian. I think this is just kind of fun, right? I mean, I think everybody that was on here was enjoying our conversation. I love talking about this kind of.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We do this for you, and it's fun, and we get this interaction. And if you're new to the chat, and if you're new to joining us on Fridays, we're building a community here. I see a lot of the same names every week, and I appreciate that dedication to food safety of willing to invest the time to come here. And if you pick up just one new thing, and it's like, oh, hadn't thought about that. It's a win. It's a win.
Exactly.
You're growing, you're improving, because if you're coasting, you're going downhill.
You're going downhill. I love that.
So thank you again, Kara. I mean, your expertise in this field is greatly appreciated, and I always love having you on.
I appreciate being asked, so thank you.
Yep. And so next week, of course, we're back here next week. I'll have my periodic table mug. We'll have another food safety expert on to put up with me and talk about the next food safety topic. So we'll see you here next Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 9 a.m. Central, where Kara's at, or 10 a.m. Eastern. Or if you're in Tunisia, whatever time that may be, it's probably from where I'm at. So thanks, everybody, again. Have a great weekend. Hope it's nice and warm where you are. We're going to have a great one here. I'm doing car work. Got to get my cars cleaned up here after winter. So
fun.
Yeah, but I'm kind of weird. I kind of like that stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, it's awesome. Great.
Yeah. So everybody have a great one. Enjoy it. And we'll see you back here next week.
Thank you.